This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
We're grateful to have you here with us as we wrap week one of the federal election campaign. Jesperson here with John Hicks in just a second. We're going to introduce you to Rahim Mohamed from the National Post, Shannon Phillips, former Alberta cabinet minister, now with Meredith, Boseenkool, and Phillips, a policy firm. Every Friday through the campaign, Real Talk is partnering with Meredith, Boseenkool, and Phillips to give you perspectives on the week that was and what's coming up in the election campaign from across the political spectrum. In other words, you're going to hear from, let me dumb it down, let me get lazy here, the left and the right every single Friday. We don't think, quite frankly, enough Canadians are doing that. We don't think that there's enough opportunities in media and otherwise for folks to hear different perspectives on not just the polls and reading into who owned the week, but whose message is truly landing, who's putting meaningful policy out there, and ultimately who's going to win this thing and form government. So we'll kick that off in 30 seconds. First, we want to let you know this episode happens with the support, the presenting sponsorship of Alberta's top online real estate school. You can find them online at relo.ca. That's RELO.ca, where better real estate training starts. You can browse their online real estate courses. If you're thinking of getting started in residential or commercial real estate, this is the best place to go. This is the only move you want to make because nobody does it better than Relo. They've got the Alberta real estate course bundles, residential or commercial, that'll set you up to write your exam, get certified, and start helping folks buy or sell that perfect property. You'll get introduced to the industry itself, understand the nuances of it, and you can save $100 off right now as well using that promo code Ryan100. That's all one word. Whether it's the commercial or the residential real estate bundle, Ryan100 will knock $100 off, and you can use it twice for commercial and residential real estate training when you get started today at relo.ca. We get to comments from the Liberal leader, Mark Carney, in just a second. Shocking comments, I guess really striking, as he just assesses the state of the relationship between Canada and the United States. And maybe this is something that we're all starting to get used to. But for me, I don't know. You have your own experience when you hear this out. But when you hear Mark Carney saying what he says and the way he says it, you go, geez, this really is the new world. Donald Trump, the disruptor, really has impacted, and not just as part of posturing, not just as part of negotiations, really has demonstrably changed the relationship between Canada and the United States. Now, the question is, what does this mean, of course, for Canada politically and otherwise? What does it mean for our economy? What does it mean for our other international relationships and diplomacy moving forward? We're going to get into it in just a second. We also want to let you know, of course, just a number of hours ago, Alberta's Premier was down in Florida, appearing on stage at a fundraiser for PragerU, the new educational materials for Florida schools, with the popular conservative podcaster Ben Shapiro. We talked about it with Rob Breckenridge yesterday, where he argued that Alberta's Premier might want to step out of the spotlight for a while, but she's been posting about it after the event, saying that she was proud to do it. She's proud to stick up for Canadians. You may suspect that we've got some submissions for the Flamethrower, which is what we'll wrap this episode up with. Those are emails to talk@ryanjesperson.com. But if you've got a hot take on this as well, if you're watching this or listening to this episode live, you can hit us up in the live chat. You can always also leave a comment on the YouTube episode itself. We get to as many of those as we can. Let's say hello to our guest this morning, Shannon Phillips, now working in political policy, government relations, a longtime Alberta MLA out of Lethbridge. She served as a cabinet minister for NDP Premier Rachel Notley. Rahim Mohamed also joining us today, a columnist with the National Post. Good morning to both of you. Thanks for making time for us today. Rahim, what do you make of Alberta Premier Smith's mission down to Florida, appearing on stage with Ben Shapiro? Is it justifiable? Is it the right move?
First off, thank you so much for having me on, Ryan. I'm a longtime listener, first-time caller. Thrilled to be here. But one thing I will say about Danielle Smith, she's always done her best when she has an antagonist in Ottawa. So Danielle Smith might not think a Carney government would be the best choice for Canada, but it would probably be the best choice for her personally, in Alberta, conservative governments tend to thrive when they have a liberal antagonist in Ottawa. Shannon will know very well that the last time the NDP was elected to a mandate in Alberta, Stephen Harper happened to be the prime minister, and Stephen Harper, was overseeing the kind of dying days of his conservative mandate. So it absolutely makes sense for Danielle Smith to continue poking the bear, to continue presenting herself as a kind of anti-Mark Carney, and continue thumbing Ottawa in the eye. That type of thing plays very well with her red meat base in the Alberta Conservatives.
Shannon, you've, of course, politically opposed Alberta Conservatives, so I suspect you're not going to provide a ringing endorsement for Smith's mission to Florida, but what do you make of her justification for doing it? She posts, "I will always stand up for the best interests of Albertans. I'm grateful for the opportunity to share the message with hundreds of Americans, thousands on social media in the weeks to come."
Well, honestly, Ryan, I mean, if this was actually good for Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, then the Liberals wouldn't be writing ads about it. At this point, every time Danielle Smith wades into this federal election, you might as well just throw a couple more points on the fire for the Carney Liberals. She's essentially should be required to register as a third-party advertiser for the Liberal Party of Canada. This is tremendously damaging to the Conservative campaign, and the way you know that is that the Liberals are spending money putting her recordings of her voice talking to Breitbart up in the air in advertising. So this is not good politics necessarily for the Conservative campaign nationally. What would likely be good politics for Pierre, for Mr. Poilievre, would be to turn around and maybe take a little run at her approach. I don't think that's going to happen. That's part of the overall tension within the Conservative strategy right now. But she wants to do these things because she's got other motivations, in terms of her own standing within a certain segment of the Conservative movement on this continent. I don't think it's advisable right now, and the way that that is the way that we know internally how the Conservative Party war room reacted to that Breitbart interview leaking on Sunday when the election was called.
Yeah, Rahim, do you buy it that ultimately will be damaging or could be damaging to Poilievre's bid to become prime minister? The comment that his perspective aligns with the new direction of America, that's kind of the statement from that Breitbart interview that's really been highlighted.
So I think it's a bit of a nothing burger. I understand why the leaking of that interview, when it was leaked, created the reaction it did, kind of heading in to the writ drop in the election call. But it would be one thing if Danielle Smith had not been arguing for a delay of tariffs pretty much consistently since President Trump was elected back in November. She really wasn't saying anything she hadn't been saying up to that point. She was tailoring the message to, I would imagine, the crowd that tends to listen to Breitbart. So she was framing essentially what she'd been saying on, outlets like CNN, outlets like CNBC, Fox Business, and tailoring it to, the audience that was listening. So I don't think there was anything particularly new in the message. The packaging, the framing might have been done in a bit of a different way, but I think it was pretty consistent to the kind of line Smith has taken vis-a-vis the Trump tariffs over the last several months.
Yeah, how do either of you, Shannon, we'll go to you first on this. How do you think that the auto tariffs, the 25% on all autos that aren't manufactured in the United States, that was kind of the big one this week? I know that April 2nd, Canadians are expecting to see more from the White House, but did that change the game? Did that make this more real? It obviously woke up a lot of people in Ontario that were thinking maybe, potentially, hopefully this was just bluster from Trump.
Well, I think it did in a couple of different ways. Number one, let's be really clear how fucking scary this is for people, right? This is hundreds of thousands of jobs potentially throughout Quebec and Ontario. So let's start there, right? That this underlines just how precarious people are feeling, how under siege we are feeling by Mr. Trump. And it may not hit us out here in Western Canada as hard in this first tranche, but it is devastating to the economy in Ontario and Quebec. It really is. So that's the first thing, and so that is going to color how the electorate reacts That's the first thing. Number two, what it allows Mr. Carney to do from a rank political perspective to move away from just how it will, change people's feelings, but from the rank politics of it, what it allows Carney to do is essentially run a split screen campaign, right, where he gets to go and now be the prime minister for a little while, meet with his cabinet, stand in front of the flags, do those kinds of prime minister-y things, and look like he's Mr. in charge, because he is. And this is what Doug Ford did to great effect just a couple of months ago, when he was running his campaign, and he was allowed to be then premier and look like that leader and crowd out every other issue and every other criticism of him. And running that split screen was incredibly useful to Mr. Ford. It allowed him to push back on any of the other criticisms that might be out there on healthcare or education or infrastructure or any of the other things that the opposition parties were trying to talk about. And just focus the issue on Trump and tariffs, which was good territory for him, and it's good territory for Carney.
Pretty remarkable. This is reporting, I'll cite Glenn McGregor from City News. I think everybody knows Corey Tenney, former Stephen Harper aide, worked on the Ford campaign in Ontario, just absolutely went off, reports McGregor, on the Conservative campaign strategy, taking aim at it at an Empire Club panel. This was earlier this week. Quote, "You've got to get on the fucking ballot question or you are going to lose." He goes on, Johnny, and says the Poilievre campaign has so far failed to adapt to the ballot question of Donald Trump and the tariffs. Instead, quote, this is a Harper guy, "You're talking about the World Economic Forum and or the Century Initiative or whatever other thing that is of little or no relevance to voters." He refers to the basic unlikability of Pierre Poilievre, says he looks too much like Trump. He sounds like Trump. You can't look and sound like the orange asshole down south. How's that for an indictment, Rahim?
So I apologize in advance for the rather crass analogy I'm about to point out.
I can't wait.
Think of a better way to put it, but the Trump tariff threats, they're like one of those nasty sexually transmitted infections that flares up for a bit, and then will go dormant for several weeks. So, you saw at the beginning of the month, I think we had 24 hours of the 25% tariffs plus 10% tariffs on energy. That hit like a nuclear bomb. People have mostly forgotten about it since then. And today we have the issue with the auto tariffs. And I think Mark Carney has to know, and people in the Trump administration, the Trump cabinet, have to know that there's no credible way to contain a supply chain for a product as complicated as an automobile within a single country in a modern 2025 economy. Trump's auto tariff threat was ridiculous. It was objectively ridiculous, but so was, Mark Carney's response that we are going to build cars entirely in Canada with a supply chain entirely contained within our borders. Are you going to buy a maple Dodge Mustang that's powered by maple syrup? I mean, this is ridiculous. This is something people at the table have to know is an incredible threat. And, we have the reciprocal tariffs coming out early next week. Reporting in the United States indicates that Canada is going to be on the lower end of the scale. So just because this is all everyone's talking about right now doesn't mean it's going to be all everyone's talking about 30 days from now when Canadians are actually going to the ballot box. So I would, if I were Poilievre's team, if I were in his back room, my advice would be keep calm and carry on.
All right, keep calm and carry on. Still like a month to go. All of this is true. You hear a lot of talk through this election about how this one is arguably, potentially the most important one in Canadian history. And when
they say that every election,
Mark Carney, they do say that every election. Rahim, I referenced Jesse Palmer and Chris Harrison before him, hosts of The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. Shannon, remember that it's always the most dramatic. That's not your favorite show.
Finale.
It's always the most dramatic finale ever. Every finale is the most dramatic finale ever. But
Rachel Lindsay, if you're watching, please marry me.
You never know who's watching. But then you hear this from Mark Carney, which is a pretty frank assessment of the state of the relationship between Canada and the U.S., and you start to wonder if it actually might be true. Here's Carney from just hours ago.
The old relationship we had with the United States, based on deepening integration of our economies and tight security and military cooperations, is over. What exactly the United States does next is unclear. But what is clear is that we, as Canadians, have agency. We have power. We are masters in our own home. Nous sommes maîtres chez nous. We can control our destiny. We can give ourselves much more than any foreign government, including the United States, can ever take away. We can deal with this crisis best by building our strength right here at home. It will take hard work. It will take steady and focused determination from governments, from businesses, from labor, from Canadians. We will need to dramatically reduce our reliance on the United States. We will need to pivot our trade relationships elsewhere. And we will need to do things previously thought impossible at speeds we haven't seen in generations.
He's not really talking about we need to influence the Americans and remind them of this wonderful relationship, Rahim. It's like he's moved on. Is this the right approach?
So if Carney were really that pessimistic about the Canada-U.S. relationship, he wouldn't have chosen to move the head office of his Toronto-based firm, Brookfield Asset Management, to New York City, Trump's hometown, after Trump was elected president. This is posturing. I mean, Trump is, he's certainly putting forward proposals that are threatening to the Canadian economy that we should be worried about. I think there are about 150,000 workers in Southern Ontario that work in the auto sector and affiliated issues. In terms of defense, he said, Canada needs to pull up its socks and get to the 2% NATO target sooner. Carney himself agrees. He just announced a aggressive plan to get to that target. So these are frictions, but I think the rhetoric that the entire relationship between Canada and the U.S. Is no more has been flipped on its head. I think that's entirely overstated and doesn't fit the reality and the facts on the ground.
Black Sheep's watching us live on YouTube on our live chat powered by Park Power. Check out exclusive deals on internet, electricity, and natural gas at parkpower.ca/realtalk. Black Sheep says, yeah, so the partnership's over. Carney goes ahead and announces that without even talking to Trump. Tracy, meantime, says, yeah, my political science and economics background tells me Carney's right. I hate it, but it's reality. Shannon, what do you think?
Well, I think the rhetoric, obviously we're in an election campaign, so it's always going to be a little bit dialed up to 11, right? But the fact of the matter is that it meets the moment. When you look at the polling, so you've got the horse race numbers where the Liberals are now in very secure majority territory. But when you look what is underneath that, you've got favorable, unfavorable, you've got the issue set, and you've got best prime minister numbers. On every single one of those, Mark Carney is absolutely mopping the floor with Pierre Poilievre in a dramatic reversal of fortunes, right? So he's way ahead in terms of people's favorable impression of him as opposed to their unfavorable impression of Pierre Poilievre. Somewhat a function of the fact that he's still a little bit unknown. But second of all, on the issue set that people think is the most important right now, even affordability has dropped a bit. It's Trump, it's tariffs, it's management of the economy, and on every single one of those metrics, in a few different polling firms, public publications or public data sets, it shows that Carney has a massive lead over Poilievre on those things. And finally, on best PM, that's the number that I always watch for as people are getting closer to and they start paying attention to election day. You kind of have to look at who do people want in charge. And on the best PM number, again, Carney leads Poilievre in some data sets by over 10 points. Okay, so that's where that's what people are looking for. Like when you watch Carney, I mean, when we just watched him just now, like he's a bit boring, right? He's a bit soporific. In fact, he's a slow delivery, but that's actually what people are looking for right now. After the financial crisis, Stephen Harper was also boring, and that's what Canadians gravitated to.
How do you influence? Let me stick with you, Shannon, and then because you've done it. Can you influence the public meaningfully? Can you regain 10 points on best PM? Like you don't roll out like a new version of Pierre Poilievre. People know him pretty well. Like he's been an MP for feels like 20 years. Like People kind of know his personality. It's kind of how he's risen to where he is, by being a bit of a prick, and his supporters love it. You don't try to dial that back now and turn him into Carney, right?
Well, no, but there has to be some kind of pivot on the substance of what he says vis-a-vis Trump. Like, he tries to brush it off, right, and goes like, "Oh, knock it off," and it just comes off as fundamentally unserious. And Canadians are looking for someone who is going to grapple with these issues seriously, in particular, in the GTA, in the Lower Mainland, and in some of the bigger cities, right? Like, even Winnipeg is now very much in play for the Liberals. So we've seen some polling that those Manitoba seats, whether they're New Democrats or Conservatives, are moving into the red column. Atlantic Canada, the Liberals are now moving up into, sort of North Korean margins. And so, like, it's happening everywhere. That's what people are looking for. And I don't know if putting Poilievre in a sweater vest right now is actually what people are looking for. They are looking for a level of seriousness, and they're not getting it from him, to the point that Tanaik was making. And the time for the War Room to pivot on this was probably sometime after January 20th. It was sometime, through February and March. It never happened. He could probably still do it. He'd have to do it in a lot more dramatic fashion, probably by distancing himself from Danielle Smith, for example, right, to really punch through to people that he's changed, and he's not going to do it. So, we'll see if this nosedive continues, because the numbers this week show, like, I was kind of expecting, things to sort of level out, but the Liberal numbers are still moving up. So we'll see once, people start to report out kind of early next week. I don't think that much has changed. And in fact, it seems to be solidifying for the Liberals, which is danger for the Conservatives. And the longer they wait to take a more serious stand on the Trump question, the more serious it becomes for them in terms of loss of seats.
For people that are listening on the podcast that aren't seeing what we've been showing you on our screens, we're referencing ECOS polling. This was conducted earlier this week, March 21st through the 25th. About 1,500 people polled, margin of error 2.5. Shows a 17-point gain for the Liberals at 50% support. Decided voters, the Conservatives 15 points back, up one at 35. And then there's just all the rest. This is a two-horse race for sure. Shannon talks about Poilievre distancing himself from Danielle Smith. Rahim, I'm not sure, there's never really been a sense that the two are aligned. It doesn't, like, they don't appear on stage together. He basically never mentions her name. He doesn't talk a lot about any of the premiers, quite frankly. How would you distance yourself from? I mean, it sort of seems like there's a lot of people that are connecting the two. She's the Conservative premier. She's invoking his name on Breitbart. She appears to be kind of speaking on his behalf, but I'm not sure that's a two-way street. What do you think?
So I'm glad that Shannon mentioned the polls, and particularly in the suburbs of Toronto and Vancouver. I would say the numbers are saying one thing and the vibes are saying another thing. So Pierre Poilievre is going out to places like London, Ontario, and Surrey, British Columbia, where the election is going to be decided, and getting rock star type receptions and treatments. 5, 6, 7,000 people are showing up to these events. These are like rock concerts. So to me, that doesn't show someone who's struggling and someone who's in decline. I think you are seeing the numbers tick toward the Liberals, but that is softer support. That support that's more flexible. The 34% of Canadians that are, kind of pro-Poilievre right now, they're locked in and they're eager to bring it home. They're going to get out to the polls. They're going to be, I think, a much more stubborn demo, and there's much less room for movement in terms of Conservative supporters, particularly, again, in those suburbs of places like Vancouver and Toronto that are going to decide the next election. And in terms of how to treat Danielle Smith, look, the Conservatives have no room to move really in Alberta. Very little is going to change. 3, 4, 5 seats tops between the Conservatives, NDP, and Liberals. I think the best way to treat Danielle Smith for Pierre Poilievre is to treat her like she doesn't exist, because Alberta is not going to be relevant in the election's outcome. You can pretty much go to bed. No offense, Shannon, but you can pretty much go to bed by the time they start rolling out election results in Mountain Time. So let's focus on the suburbs of the GTA and the winnable parts of Quebec, where the riding's going to be, where the election's going to be won or lost.
Want to give a shout out to everybody that's joining us as YouTube members as this is happening. Day 2 of YouTube memberships available on Real Talk. Shout out to those of you. I just saw Erica sign up, Justin, a whole bunch of you. Jay Draw is in there in the live chat, says, I don't think Mark Carney is in a position to be saying American relations are over. He has not been given the vote to be saying things like that. Will says Mark Carney is a peak liberal politician. Boring, stable, predictable levels of corruption that we shake our head at and go on with our day instead of cartoonish mobsterism like Pierre Poilievre and Donald Trump. That from Will, who's watching us live on YouTube. More with Rahim Mohamed from the National Post, Shannon Phillips from Meredith, Boseenkool, and Phillips. I want to ask Rahim about his piece in the National Post, Carney defending Brookfield's use of Bermuda tax shelters. Are the Conservatives making the most of the opportunities they have to criticize Carney? We hear Poilievre talking a lot about moving HQ down to New York. Is it actually resonating with Canadians? Do they care? We'll get into that next. But first, I want to remind you that this episode happens with the support of our amazing friends at California Closets, a Canadian-owned and operated business, the best in the business for custom closets and storage solutions for the entire home. When you're dealing with California Closets, you're dealing with a family-owned business that is employing Albertans and doing all of their manufacturing on Canadian soil. Whether it's your entryway, your mudroom, maybe it's your laundry room, or that dream walk-in closet in your primary bedroom, they've done it all, and they can work with any space and any budget. You can learn more about the different levels, the different styles of installation they have, from practical simplicity all the way up to luxury refined. That's also where you can request that free consultation on their website at californiaclosets.ca. Our friends at Athabasca University reminding you that they're world-class accredited online degrees and courses designed so you can complete your education wherever and whenever it works for you. That's why more than 50,000 alumni from over 100 different countries have pursued their post-secondary journey at Athabasca U, where your only commute is to your device. You can learn more about the AU Advantage by checking out their website. That's athabascau.ca. And if you missed it, make sure you check out our episode from about a week ago. This was such a wonderful conversation. Johnny, how good was that about neurodiversity in the workplace? This is a new course.
Big show.
At Athabasca University. Loved this one. This was a great episode, and Tara Langen talked to us. She's partnering with AU on that. Just one of the offerings available for you today. If you're looking to level up your career offerings, embrace opportunities in a new job market, look no further than Athabasca U. And our friends at North Road Investment Council know that during an election, especially with international turmoil, that's what we'll call it, happening between Canada and the United States right now, a lot of people are wondering what it means for their investments. What does it mean for their nest egg? Life's financial journey does not always follow a straight path, and that's why Marshall, Carey, and the team at North Road Investment Council work with discerning families, foundations, and associations on the winding path with expert navigation, a strategic approach to wealth management that'll align with your vision, and that includes digital risk advisory. They're the only firm with a team member specifically and solely dedicated to ensuring that you're not susceptible to digital risk. You can learn more about that and their offerings by checking out their website. That's northroadic.com. We're hanging out on this Friday with Rahim Mohamed. He's a journalist and a political commentator at the National Post. You can read his work at nationalpost.com. And Shannon Phillips, a former Alberta cabinet minister, longtime MLA out of Lethbridge, now a partner at Meredith, Boseenkool, and Phillips. Rahim, take us into the Brookfield story. Whether it's moving the office down to New York, whether it's using Bermuda tax shelters, it can be twisted. The narrative can be tweaked to present Carney in sort of Ignatieff-type fashion. He didn't come back for you. This guy's a global elite. He's all talk. He doesn't care about keeping jobs in Canada. What's the story, and how would you say the Conservatives are capitalizing on it or not?
Well, first of all, I would say finance wasn't my best subject in college. I think I took one course I had to withdraw from. So, I mean, this is all very complicated in terms of his financial dealings at Brookfield, certain taxation arrangements he set up involving offshore shelters. It's all very high level. And it does concern me somewhat because the Conservatives are not suggesting he's done anything illegal or even anything that's not standard practice in, an asset management firm like Brookfield. And it reminds me of what I think one of the turning points was for Donald Trump in the 2016 presidential election. I think he was at a debate with Hillary Clinton, and she accused him of using some tax loophole. And he said, of course I used it because I'm smart. That makes me smart. And other smart, rich people like me use the same loopholes. So I think these sorts of attacks can inadvertently drive home the point that, Carney is a really sophisticated economic technician that knows how someone like Donald Trump operates. That's dealt, with businessmen like Donald Trump that get down and dirty and bend the rules before, and therefore is better suited to sit across the table from Donald Trump. So I think I'm not sure that these sorts of lines of attack are the best thing for conservatives to be emphasizing. Conservatives weren't talking a whole lot about offshore tax shelters, before Mark Carney started being associated with them. If I were to guess, the polling of people who use offshore tax shelters would probably lean a bit to the conservative side. So I just don't see this as a successful line of attack.
Shannon, I wouldn't say that it just doesn't strike me as like big bombs dropping. And I just don't know that it's resonating with Canadians, and it's not for lack of effort. Poilievre has been going back to that well all week long, and I'm not sure that it sticks. Could it?
Maybe if they put some money behind it, and there's sort of a confluence of arguments here coming from the CPC war room and the NDP war room, right? And it's really the only way to kind of start to chip away at some of those numbers that I was talking about earlier with respect to best PM, favorable view of him as a person, right? You have to kind of take a run at character and judgment. So that's what they're trying to do, to just kind of flesh out what the war room's trying to do here. Do I think it's going to be successful? It could be on the margins. And quite frankly, the CPC need the New Democrats to do better. They need to bring up that vote in the GTA in the Lower Mainland if they have a hope in hell. And so, it is a sort of a line of attack that converges between the Conservatives and the New Democrats. So you can see why they're doing it. I do not know if it will punch through. The Conservatives are, as soon as you're into the campaign period, you're in the same spending ceiling as everyone else, right? And so and that's one of the reasons why Carney called that snap election, was to stop the Conservatives from spending their enormous war chest outside of the RIP period. Now that we're in the RIP period, it depends on what they decide to put their money behind, whether it's Pierre is strong enough to stand up to Trump, if it's the lost liberal decade line, which is a pretty good line, if we're all being honest, or if it's some of the Carney, sort of character questions lines. They're going to be out in the field focus testing this and seeing what works the best for them. It's very complicated, to Rahim's point, and I think that works against them. But what does help the Conservatives is how Carney has been responding to some of this. He gets a bit snippy, right, with reporters when he gets asked about this stuff. He starts to sort of do the, here's a long explanation from the boardroom. And it doesn't sound relatable to people. It sounds like he's being defensive and chippy with reporters. There's no reason for it. He's not making a values argument, right? In other words, he hasn't taken political advice from political people briefing him before he gets out there to the podium. And that shows a lack of experience. And it shows maybe a bit of a countenance of being too good to be told, right? And too good to be briefed, which that could be the weakness in all of this, more so than the substance.
I just have the highest amount of respect for anybody that seeks political office. It takes a ton of work, the door knocking, the rallying, the fundraising, and I contribute to Politico in their Ottawa Playbook every Thursday. I'll be doing so through the campaign. And I wrote about a riding that I'm watching, and that is my riding. That's Edmonton Centre, where I think, based on recent developments, Liberal incumbent Randy Boissonnault, he's not running anymore after what I assume was a directive from the Carney team. He says it's after he talked to his family and friends. I don't know that anybody believes any of that anymore.
Well, and then Sean Fraser and Nita Nunn.
Yeah,
really hate their families.
We'll talk about Sean Fraser in just a sec. But it seems like and a relatively unknown Conservative candidate who hustled and out-organized, and good for Saeed Ahmed for getting the nomination. I think it took James Cumming by surprise, the former MP. Yeah. Hey, Shannon, your eyebrows just raised like mine did when I heard what happened. But you got Tricia Estabrooks there, former chair of the Edmonton Public School Board, a former CBC journalist, well-respected in the community. Could actually, I think, I'm not saying she will, but she could come up the middle and win this one for the NDP. There are ridings across Canada where I think the NDP could win, but after this long preamble, here's the question. What the hell's going on with the NDP? Shannon, it feels like, as a casual observer, or maybe a little bit more, it feels like they're not even trying. And I want to say it respectfully, but like, where are they? Where's the noise? What's going on?
Now that Trudeau has exited, when you look at that debate stage, you've got one incumbent left.
Yeah.
And it's Jagmeet Singh. If you go back 6 months, we were all talking about the, elections around the world where incumbents were all having their asses handed to them. Right. And really, David Eby was one of the only ones who made it alive in the Canadian political context. Every other incumbent was shown the door, and around the world, that was the narrative. Around elections, that people were mad about inflation, they were mad about post-COVID recovery, they were mad. It didn't matter if they were mad at a right-wing party or mad at a left-wing party. They were turfing everyone. So now, fast forward to now, the only incumbent you have left, really, because Trudeau has left. Pierre was never, part of any of the governing for the last 4 years. You've only got Jagmeet Singh left, and because he signed that confidence and supply agreement, which from the get-go, I did not view as smart politics at all. Why you were, sort of hitching your wagon to a third-term government that really there's only one way to go but down when you're in their third term, barring something extraordinary happening like what's happening right now. But he did that. That was not smart. And what it did was it allowed them to get a bit lazy. Right, in terms of getting, and it allowed them, or it forced them to be in this really weird space where they couldn't really criticize the Liberal government, because if they did, then why are you propping them up and yada, yada, yada. It didn't allow them to be their own entity. So he's kind of stuck with the Trudeau baggage, and he's the one guy left holding the bag up there that is stuck with all of that unpopularity. Now, having said all that as preamble, you are right, Ryan, that there are seats where the New Democrats are extremely strong on the ground and might be able to pull it off despite the very high unfavorables for Mr. Singh, the fact that he doesn't really, lift the campaign in vast swaths of this country where otherwise the party is competitive because of that baggage that I just described. Edmonton Centre would be probably one of those ridings where, like, if Trish is going to pull it off, it's going to be on the strength of that Rachel Notley endorsement and the fact that she herself has been working her ass off, right, for like a year and a half. So, and she's good at it. And she's been knocking on doors, and she's a pretty good political athlete. I know her a little bit. So it will be despite the leader, not because of it, and that is a real boat anchor for New Democrats in otherwise winnable seats.
Bit of a local reference as well for Albertans and in particular Edmontonians will also be keeping a keen eye on that Edmonton Griesbach riding. The incumbent Blake Desjardins, I know a popular NDP member of Parliament, but Kerry Diott is back, beating Edmonton councillor Karen Principe for that Conservative nomination. He wants that job back. That's a riding we'll be watching. Rahim, what do you make of what the New Democrats have been doing or not doing early in the campaign?
Sure. So the irony of this kind of situation is I feel like the New Democrats federally have always had two strains. You've had the kind of liberal light you get in central Canada and the Western prairie populism. From as far as I can tell, the prairie populist wing is doing very, very well. Wab Canoe, by far and away the most popular premier in Canada. I think there's going to be a lot of chatter about WAB moving up to the federal level after Jagmeet finishes off with this election. But Jagmeet Singh, at the end of the day, he is a debonair, handsome lawyer from Brampton, Ontario, Osgoode Hall educated, wears a Rolex and bespoke suits. Not really the person to go fire and brimstone, for Canadian workers. Arguably, conservative leader Pierre Poilievre fits that bill a little better. As you know, an orphan child, sort of adopted by a kind of middle working class teachers in Calgary, had a bit of a hard scrabble upbringing, seems a lot better navigating those circles when he visits steel mills, when he visits, plants and other sort of blue collar workplaces. It seems very comfortable with that crowd. That crowd really seems to resonate with him. So it does seem as though we're at a populist moment, and the Conservative Party it's taken a bit of a populist swing, and it's eating a lot of the Conservative lunch, particularly with those kind of blue collar unionized workers. So Pierre Poilievre is already racking up a number of, I would say, atypical endorsements for a Conservative campaign from unions like the boilerplate makers in Ontario. So again, you're getting the shift to populism, which doesn't work in the favor of a kind of liberal light, debonair Central Ontario NDP leader like Jagmeet Singh.
Before we thank you both for your time, and again, this is something we're going to do every Friday. We're going to take a look across the political spectrum, analyze the week that was, and look ahead. Rahim, you and your team just hit publish on this story about a half an hour before you joined us at nationalpost.com. The Conservative leader pledging life sentences for gun, human, and fentanyl trafficking, obviously hoping that this tough on crime message will land in the GTA and across the country. Take us into it.
Sure. He already announced the life sentences for so-called fentanyl kingpins. So I believe the threshold he announced was 40 grams or higher would lead to a mandatory life sentence. So this was very clearly a tailored message to those must-win suburbs around Toronto. So it began with a news clipping about a horrific, egregious human trafficking story from Barrie, Ontario. Also included a crime clipping from Markham, Ontario, a bedroom community of Toronto. So these are areas where you have seen kind of surging public safety issues in the past 3, 4, 5 years with things like auto thefts, mugging, aggravated sexual assaults. So this is something, again, if Poilievre is playing a longer game, a good number of Canadians in these suburban places would say they feel like they're an awfully lot less safe than they were 4 years ago. And Mark Carney has reversed a few of Trudeau's positions on things like energy development. He hasn't rolled out a kind of get tough on crime plan just yet. That might be coming, but he hasn't said anything about sort of prosecuting fentanyl offenses, about changing the bail system to end, what the Conservatives call catch and release policings. That doesn't seem to be a huge priority for Carney, and this is an area where, if he targets the right messages to the right suburbs of places like Toronto and Vancouver, he can, pick up a handful of really critical swing ridings that could, change the outcome of a close election.
Shannon, will it land? I mean, this election, people talk about the ballot box question. It can't just be about the United States, although I guess when people go to mark their X, sometimes they're thinking, like, do I want it to be this person or this person, not digging deep into crime policy. What do you think? Can it be an effective move?
Well, maybe, but I mean, quite frankly, it's just not on where Alberta or where Canadians are at in any way, shape, or form. And so they're trying to make the ballot question about other things because they're not strong on the central question of how does Canada stand up to Trump and fight back on tariffs. Their only public policy answer so far has been to cut taxes as their sort of their tariff response, which, when people are looking at imminent EI claims, when they're looking at collapse of supply chain, those kinds of things, that's just cutting my taxes doesn't help here, right? So there's no real answer to that question. So they're trying to make it about everything else. That would not be my recommendation. That's certainly not recommendation from a number of senior Conservatives who are now publicly doing things like speaking to the media, leaking polling. They are starting to fight amongst themselves a little bit about this Pierre Poilievre strategy. It's just off key, right? And so he wants to sing from the same sheet music as 2024. He wants to prosecute the 2024 campaign. We're not there anymore. He does not have a time machine, so there is a risk in just trying to talk to people about things that maybe 10% of the electorate would put as their top matter, when 50, 60, 70% are talking about Trump, tariffs, economy, economic management, support of affected industries. Those are the top issues. He should get on them. And the fact that he hasn't might account for the fact that the Liberals are in very strong majority territory right now, like not just a little bit. Right. They're in 180 seat projection territory right now. This is some of the numbers they're putting up there on the board are people are starting to make 1968 references. Right. So they really, really might have a significant loss, the Conservatives, if they do not reverse course.
I feel like I'm going to have to see it to believe it, based on what I figured was going to happen over the past year and a half. That's why we do the election. We're sure grateful for both of you joining us this morning. You can read more about what Shannon and her partners Ken and Tyler are doing at Meredith, Boseenkool, and Phillips. Make better policy at mbpolicy.com. And of course, you can read Rahim's work through the campaign, doing a hell of a job covering it at nationalpost.com.
Appreciate that. I have to plug my colleague, Catherine Levette. Just had a banger of a scoop this morning come out about potential issues with duplication in Mark Carney's PhD dissertation at Oxford. So that's something I would go check out if you haven't already.
Well, hang on. I mean, I don't. We can click on it right. Do you guys have 3 minutes? I'm just trying to respect your time.
Wow.
Why not? I mean, if you want to get into it, we can get into it. This isn't terrestrial radio, Rahim. We can do whatever the fuck we want. There's no hockey show that's starting in 3 minutes. I don't have to throw. So here it is at nationalpost.com, an exclusive. Mark Carney faces plagiarism accusations for a 1995 Oxford doctoral thesis. I've not read it, but take us into it.
Sure. So Catherine might be the best in the business at what she does. I saw her work on this story for a week and a half. She was very, very thorough. There was a deep dive into the 300-page plus dissertation. There were 10 instances. Catherine and people working on the story were able to identify where sort of passages, sentence, paragraph-long passages were lifted directly from other sources without proper attribution. Catherine was also able to go to people who've sat on plagiarism committees at different universities and get them to weigh on this. And the sense is that this would violate a number of different policies. This stated Carney's camp must have seen this coming. His dissertation chair at Oxford was very quick to mount a defense and basically said, when you're writing a 300-word work of scholarship like this, there are going to be coincidences. There are going to be areas where your language overlaps with the language of other scholars. So something that I think the campaign will need to address directly at some point. Carney is very holed up with his prime minister hat on right now, dealing with the immediate tariffs that are set to come in on Wednesday. I believe his only official event today is a virtual first ministers meeting in Montreal. But this is something I think the Carney camp is going to have to come out and address, and it does play into a kind of sneaky Mark Carney narrative that the Conservatives are trying to advance. So he's been accused of lifting a few Conservative platform items, fudging parts of his work history with Brookfield. So this could be very damaging if there's not a robust response from the Carney camp.
So they say talent borrows and genius steals, but when your character is exposed as less than pristine, that can be problematic for a politician. Shannon, if you're on Carney's team today, which you're not, let's be clear, but if you are, how nervous are you about this? From 1 to 10, 1 being no sweat, 10 being oh shit.
I don't know how nervous I am if you respond to it appropriately. I mean, obviously, wheeling out the guy from Oxford is probably a good idea. It is 30 years old. It's how the candidate responds is actually the important piece, and that's the piece that I'd be the most nervous about, right? Without getting too snarky and too uppity in the response, because there has been a little bit of that, so he just needs to be able to move it aside as quickly as possible in a way that is relatable and political, right? And not sort of explanatory or professorial, but actually political and making a values connection to people, right? Because, like, let's face it, doing a PhD at Oxford is not a hugely relatable job experience.
Yeah, we have Aurora Astra in our live chat right now. Says, what about Pierre's dissertation? Oh, right, he doesn't have one.
I mean, there's that too.
I have one. It gives me no clout in the newsroom at all.
Do you have one?
If anything, my PhD in political science is something I've had to unlearn to be an effective reporter.
Agreed.
It's been the biggest liability I've had in my professional life so far.
Certainly for writing skills, you have to unlearn everything you learn in academia. It is also 30 years ago, right? So thanks for the reminder, everyone, that, I was also an undergrad 30 years ago, which... 30 years ago is the mid-1990s. Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because we're old now.
Can we stop, please? Can we stop?
But, it's not what sometimes it's not what the other guys throw at you. It's how you respond that actually makes the story. And are we making a Friday afternoon story, or are we making a 3-day story? And that's going to be the test for Carney on some of these things, the Brookfield stuff. And he's going to be taking more of these spitballs, right? And whether those spitballs actually become BB gun bullets or actual bullets is a matter for him and how he responds. It's not what the bad guys say to you. It's what you say back. And he's going to have to keep this sort of countenance of being above it all, of being more prime ministerial, but also, coming off as a little bit more of a normal person. That's going to be the piece for him. And, despite the fact that, like, Pierre can go and, like, cosplay, like, working class people on a shop floor or whatever, he's also not the most relatable dude ever, right? So you kind of have these, like, competing, just political commodities that were sort of grown in their respective petri dishes. It's going to be interesting to see how quickly Carney learns on the job to be a politician rather than a policy wonk.
That is Shannon Phillips, and making his debut today, and grossly underpresented by the host. It has been Dr. Rahim Mohamed, PhD political science. Thanks to both of you for doing this. That was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Real talkers, let us know what you think. To talk at RyanJesperson.com. Plagiarism accusations. I mean, we were learning that on the fly. Good for
fucking reacher there.
I'm happy. Who was it? Someone here. Is it Maxine that's watching us live on Facebook right now? I just saw somebody commented, said they're digging up bones.
Yeah, that's
now. Okay, so it's like it's not a thing, but it also definitely is a thing. Do you know what I mean?
It is.
You know what I mean? Like 1995. If it's true, let's say huge. If true, if it's true,
huge.
If he plagiarized, they say. So I'm just reading through this again. This is Catherine Levesque's reporting at nationalpost.com. Carney's doctorate in economics from Oxford shows 10 instances of apparent plagiarism, according to academics who reviewed the material. The National Post obtaining a copy of the thesis for his doctorate in economics from Oxford titled The Dynamic Advantage of Competition. 10 instances of apparent plagiarism, according to the judgment of 3 university academics who reviewed the material. In several sections of the thesis, Carney used full quotes, paraphrases, or slightly modified quotes from 4 previous works without proper acknowledgement or attribution. And then the story goes on from there. Number 1, never cool to plagiarize. Don't plagiarize, kids.
Of course not.
Number 2, does the average person, like, is this... it's designed, the story can act planting this seed with people. Is he, what's the word there? Sneaky Carney. You're seeing the ads, right? They have like the red filter over the video, and they kind of have this one where he looks a little sinister. Everything in super,
it's like a horror movie.
Super slow-mo. Like, he's got like blood dripping from his face. He's sneaky. He lacks care. Can you trust this person?
Yeah.
That kind of idea. I'd be curious to know if the average person, has the average person, I'm not justifying it, but has the average person maybe plagiarized a little bit on their own university paper?
Oh, for sure.
Are kids these days trying to find ways to use ChatGPT to write their entire thesis?
Ryan, think about 10, 5 even. 20 years from now, for sure, when AI has just become, the crutch in society for getting your daily life in order. I mean, this stuff's going to be everywhere. But I think this is grasping at straws. But, one thing's for sure. I think Mark Carney, whether he wins or loses, is going to rue the day he became the leader of the Liberal Party of Canada, because this guy had a cushy life. I mean, he was just sitting around, moving money around, being the head of banks, avoiding taxes. No, I'm just kidding. But and now, like, if this is the stuff, if they're looking for this stuff, he's got to be thinking, oh my gosh, they got to be looking at, and that's what happens when you try to become prime minister. I get it, but
that's what happens when you try to become a city councillor, man.
It's just insane the level that this is going to already.
Dubious says every kid in the world is using AI to cheat.
All of them. Not cheat, but just daily life. Like, hey, be honest. We all do it. You write out an email and then you ask AI, make this a little cleaner, polish this up. Make it a little more professional. Did I make any spelling errors? Screw all those. I was just going to say an app, but I don't want to give anyone advertising, but all those apps that spell checked everything for you. And even they're in some email apps now as well. Those are gone. Chat GPT, AI apps on your phone. They are the new norm. And I think this stuff is going to become more and more. I mean, we're going to wake up one day and AI is just going to be like, you can't live without me.
Hey, can you call up the photos, just having fun and fucking around? Can you call up the photos that I had AI generate of Pierre Poilievre yesterday? You know the ones I'm talking about with the beard? Johnny and I are just being silly. If you listen every day and if you catch every show, boy, number one, do we ever appreciate you? Number two, you know that yesterday we were talking about whether or not Pierre Poilievre needs to grow a beard, and so we had AI generate some images for us. And
what would happen if he did? Obviously,
what would happen if he did?
Notice.
Farah's watching us, by the way, live on Facebook right now. Says this is a distraction. This is really grasping hard at straws. This plagiarism story. Jay, watching us on YouTube, says this PhD story reeks of political desperation. We'll get to the Pierre Poilievre photos in just a second.
No, they're here.
John, I'm a veteran talk show host, and I'm going to break right now. Yeah, of course they're sexy. He looks unbelievable. That in just a minute. First, my friends, the deadline is fast approaching, and I want to make sure that you're in on Full House Lottery at fullhouse.ca. We're so proud to be supporting this lottery that's going to make sure that much-needed funds make their way to the University of Alberta and the Royal Alexandra Hospitals. Now, it's time to dream big and win bigger. Take 5 minutes today and check out their website, fullhouse.ca. You can tour this dream home, this grand prize, a legacy signature dream home, the package worth more than $2.25 million, including a stunning legacy signature dream home, a 2025 Alfa Romeo Stelvio Tributo Italiano. It's so fun to say, even more fun to drive. And 20 grand cash. You can pay your property taxes for the whole year and more. Plus grand prize too, dream vacations for life. 210,000 cash to spend on travel or whatever you choose and more. And of course, grand prize number 3, a tiny dream home. I love this one. I'm just looking through the floor plan right now of these dream homes, John, deciding which room I'm going to set up as my sports room, which room is going to transform our culinary hosting night. Dream big, win big by signing up today. Get your tickets at fullhouse.ca. Hey, there's a big celebration coming up at Friesen Brothers. Early April, they present for the first time ever a Filipino feast on the 5th and the 6th, an all-you-can-eat Filipino feast at Friesen Brothers at the participating locations in Edmonton, Glenora, Rabbit Hill, Stoney, Hinton Hill, Peace River, Fort Sask, and Drumheller. An opportunity to savor authentic Filipino food in Alberta prepared by Friesen Brothers Red Seal chefs. It includes the salad bar, $25 per person, all you can eat. Learn more, check out the menu at friesen.com. We're very, very proud of the work that's being done at UCAN Youth Services, and we want to make sure that Real Talkers understand exactly what's happening. In particular, we've been focusing on their Relentless program. These are outreach workers that are on a daily basis reaching out to the 50 young people that are most interacting with the Edmonton Police Service. These are 12 to 17-year-olds that are in and out of the justice system, lacking basic opportunities, lacking basic supports in some circumstances, like housing, like lunch, stuff like the good influences in their life. These relentless outreach workers are addressing school factors, employment factors, family factors, peer group factors, and more. Quite frankly, we'd be lost without these types of supports. They are changing lives, and they can do even more with your support. You can learn more about donating, volunteering, or getting involved by checking out their website, youcan.ca. And a quick shout out to those golfers. I know that we've got like a foot and a half of snow on the ground right now, but soon, very soon, we'll be back out at the Ranch Golf and Country Club for what promises to be another wonderful season of golf. Nobody does golf tournaments like the Ranch, and that includes the Real Talk Golf Classic, which is coming up on Thursday, the 19th of June. You can sign up for that on our website. And if you're in charge of putting a tournament together for your business, your community group, your nonprofit, reach out to Murray and the team at theranchgolf.com. They host more than 120 golf tournaments per year. They are dialed in. Set it and forget it, you could say, at theranchgolf.com.
Dialed in. Shout out to our new YouTube members. Thank you so much, AJ Old, Gizmo, Dubious, Erica Kirkman, Mashif Sharon, I hope I'm pronouncing your first name right, and Justin D. Evans upped his level. He wanted, he didn't get enough from Real Talk. He went up
the Real Deal.
He went up to Real Deal. Still waiting on our first Real Talk VIP.
The real VIP.
Oh, we're gonna do an air horn when that happens.
If you're wondering what we're talking about, new YouTube memberships, you'll never have to pay for Real Talk, guys. It's always going to be free, the podcast and the YouTube episodes. But if you want to show your support, specifically on YouTube, you can sign up as a Real Talker for $5 a month, $15 a month, the Real Deal, and $150 a month, the Real VIP. That includes exclusive merch, your name displayed during every show, and an annual VIP meetup. We get into it in detail in our most recent episode, so you can check it out there. So we're fooling around yesterday, and we're talking about, should Pierre Poilievre grow a beard? Could it sway the undecideds? Could it resonate with suburban voters, if you know what I mean?
I don't think he needs to jack up his young male support. He's pretty solidified in that area.
The young men, and they would love it anyway. You look at some of the big heroes in pop culture right now, and they've got, I don't know why I'm thinking of Jason Momoa right now, but
that's for the women. But so, I think this is a miss on Carney's team. Like they've got with the Mike Myers thing. Like, yeah, that was great, but all the things they were referring to are like, if you're our age or older, you get it. But like the young vote, Carney really needs to focus on that, because the young males, let's not joke around. Let's not be stupid. They're with Poilievre right now.
Well,
in numbers, you look at them, he's got them, right?
Yeah, so, maybe. I mean, that's certainly a demographic that was well represented with the new supporters, the new party members that he brought in.
But
so
this
prompted the conversation. The conversation started when a Real Talker noted that they've seen a little bit of gray in Poilievre's hair on the campaign. They said he stopped dyeing his hair.
Mentioned it.
Maybe he's trying to kind of catch up to Carney and look a little bit more, a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a little bit more life experience, a little gray there. And so we had AI, for those of you listening on the podcast right now, you've got Poilievre, which what would look like kind of like an official House of Commons type photo with kind of a nice, clean beard. This is how would you call this? This is like the president of the Community Association beard.
Alberta separatist.
No, that's the next one.
Boom!
So here's the next one. And I asked AI, I said, please make the beard bigger and make his biceps bulge. And so here you have lumberjack Pierre Poilievre, absolutely jacked. With the, that's the quick Dick McDick beard right there. That's what that is.
This is making $2 million a year on TikTok by chopping wood, Pierre Poilievre. Like this is thirsty.
Yeah,
Pierre Poilievre.
But the talk about to be serious, we're messing around here, obviously. But I am intrigued by the talk, and Shannon got into it today, talking about like that prime ministerial type look that you've got to go for. You've got to show people that they, you got to convince people that they can picture you in that role. And interesting to see that Carney's leading the polling in that context when Poilievre has undergone essentially like a relatively, I wouldn't say dramatic, but a strategic image makeover over the past year and a half or so. It's been pretty obvious.
And Pierre did this as well. He went from like, a different haircut, wearing glasses, suits that weren't perfectly tailored. Like you can tell they cost a pretty penny.
Yeah.
But now suits that are perfectly tailored, you can tell he's working out a little more. His hair was slicked back, contacts in, no glasses. And now we're seeing him kind of revert a little. He's trying to get in the middle now where the gray's coming out a bit. No suit jacket anymore. The younger look with like the button up and slacks, sometimes no tie, sometimes top button open. So I think he's going through a bit of an identity crisis, I think, because he's trying to be like, and I think he's thinking this too, is like, I've got the young males. I've got the, he needs those older voters. And Carney's kind of the reverse. Like he's got the older voters in droves, but like, do the young kids, do they even know who Mike Myers is other than the guy who played Austin?
Yeah,
Myers?
I don't think they're worried about that. I think that this it strikes me as like if you look at who votes and who doesn't, the older you get, the more likely you are to vote.
I get it, but like look in the States,
yeah.
Like if that happens here, young men came out in droves.
It's a Calgary mayoral candidate, Jeremy Farkas, is watching the show live on YouTube, says that lumberjack, he says that is the profile photo for an OnlyFans. Says that's what that is.
I told you, that's the thirsty PP.
Yeah.
The thirsty PP, that's a username.
What's this from Blast Sheep, who says, no, wait, Jespo knows Quick Dick McDick. What? Quick Dick McDick comes on the show all the time, bro.
Come on.
Absolutely. Check out our archives. Hey, I wanted to get to, we've got some emails here that don't qualify for Flamethrower. They're far too nice. And you don't know that this one is coming, Johnny, but I wanted to read this. I've kept it from you. From Fiona, who wrote in. I printed it and deleted it out of the inbox so you couldn't see it. I wanted you to see it on the show. She says, I'm writing in only to say that on your March 26th episode, I absolutely loved Johnny's comments regarding cutting funding to the most vulnerable and how not helping the people who are down and out is just so counterproductive. His response that helping those in need helps everyone, she says so many can relate to and agree with what he said. Fiona,
nice.
Just passing along a little bouquet for you there, pal.
Yeah,
I thought that was a nice comment that you made on the show.
Yeah, and a lot of people, it's like such an old way of thinking, old opinion, like looking down on the downtrodden, like poor people.
You were talking about slashing budgets is what you were talking about.
Yeah, but this relates to everything. This relates to the aid that they're cutting in the States, the foreign aid. I mean, when you step on people who are already down, that's when they get desperate. And I'm not saying everyone turns to crime, but that is when crime goes up. That's when people start stealing. And I'm not just talking about the old adage like a loaf of bread for their family. That's when they get desperate. That's when they turn to crime. That's when they join gangs. That's when they do things that end up on your doorstep. And then you say, why are our cities not safe? Why is the south side of Edmonton scary now? It shouldn't be. Well, because we're not supporting people the way they should be. And I know we've had shows on this. There's levels to this. Is it the opioid crisis? Is it the cost of housing? Is it, fallout from COVID? It's all of those things. But in general, like, we got to support getting people into places where they're not freezing to death, getting them off of drugs. Like, we should be giving more money to that. Every budget should be like, we're giving more money to these things. And everyone should thumbs up.
Tracy says these two men, I think she's talking about us, checking out all the fine looks details on these two politicians. Says, I can't say I've ever noticed any of that, but that's just me.
Hey, come on.
I do think that
2025. We're allowed to say a guy is hot.
No, I know. I'm just saying, I think subtle appearance-based things do matter for politicians.
100.
Just think, like if a politician wears an ill-fitting suit, or it comes across like they're a little clueless. They don't know what they're doing. Daniel, meantime, rightly critical, and this is AI image generation. This is not actually Pierre Poilievre.
No.
But if you want to show the lumberjack photo again, he says he better have big biceps if he's going to choke up on the axe like that. That would be virtually impossible to split wood holding the axe like that. But don't tell AI. AI doesn't know how to actually chop wood, everybody. This is why you need the humans.
Now I am getting uncomfortable. All these photos, you talking about splitting wood. There's a lot of stuff flying around right now.
There's a lot of things happening below the surface.
But man, I'm just every day on the show. Can I just thank you, because we've been having such a good time and working so hard, but also like, how fun is this? I think this is our first. It is our first federal election doing the show together, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, and it just it's
not the show's first federal election, but it's yours and mine.
But this is what we get up for in the morning. How fun is this every day? Like, just being able to just see what's going on. And you just mentioned it. This day and age, it's a whole new world in terms of campaigning. Like, if you don't think looks are important, every time I open an app, anything, Instagram, Facebook, whatever, I see Pierre, I see Carney, I see Singh and the Bloc Québécois guy and whoever else, and the Green Party who has 2 leaders. What kind of strategy is that? But image is everything nowadays. If you think it's not, then you're wrong.
Joe Whitbread is watching us on Facebook. What's up, Joe? Down in Red Deer says, I completely agree with Johnny's assessment. I'm a Gen Xer, and Wayne's World or Austin Powers misses the mark for my sons who are now voting aged. I can't believe Joe's sons are voting age. I watched Joe's little guys come up, these remarkable hockey players. He says, you get it, Johnny, you get it, and it's missing the mark for the younger voters and saying that it's not, well, you're showing your age.
It hits with me, but like if you want to hit younger, like bring Mr. Beast on there. Bring,
Can you imagine?
You know what I mean?
What
like,
would it cost to get Mr. Beast to endorse you politically? That'd cost $1 million. That'd cost more than $1 million.
I'm not going to say movies are old, but like bring on a social, like, I don't think premiers should act like prime ministers and influence foreign policy. I don't think Danielle going down to talk to Ben Shapiro is a good thing, but she knows what she's doing. Like get a podcaster on your ad, get a social media celebrity, get someone who's in the public's hand every day on their phone. Mike Myers is a legend, a Canadian icon. I love the guy, but he's not getting you any younger voters under
you should get like
40, 35
Tate McRae.
Yeah, you know what I mean? There you go.
But that's easier said. That's easier said than done. But I'll take the point for sure.
I think the prime minister can make a call and get anyone, on a minute.
Know,
well,
man.
Not
that
anyone.
The whole thing. Remember
politics.
We talked about
I get it.
Michael Jordan too. Remember Michael Jordan's comment where he, people asked why he wouldn't use his platform, use his influence. The greatest basketball player of all time. Come at me. He's the greatest of all time. Michael Jordan. LeBron can't hold a candle.
The guy flies.
And they asked him why he didn't use his platform to influence politics, to influence the American people. And he said, because Republicans buy sneakers too. Oh, and sometimes when you're at that level, quite frankly, you plant your flag politically and, it could be detrimental to what you're doing, right?
She's in like the top 10 pop stars right now. So, that probably would rock her boat a bit. But, someone that you knew was a supporter, like clearly Mike Myers wanted, like he's on SNL wearing T-shirts and like he wanted into the fight. But yeah, I think Carney just needs to rethink some of that. And then we were just talking about how it's so fun seeing the election and just being a part of this. This is what we wake up for. One huge miss, I think, is the carbon tax thing. Like there was here Party All the Time audio version out right now, episode 1, our new podcast that we're collaborating with Vicky Mochama. Go check it out now, Apple, Spotify. They were commenting on, there was some post the Liberal Party put out when they changed the carbon tax or took it away or whatever Carney has done, right? And they were like, day 3, Carney has done it. He's capped the carbon tax or he's changed it or he's done away with it. And they were talking about this on the show, and I just agreed with them 100%. It's such an L for like a decade almost to have this as the flag of your campaign that you're waving, and then to just totally 180 and try and own that like a W. It'd be like Obama switching one day and being like, Obamacare is over. It sucks. You know what I mean? It's like you created this. This was the flag you were waving for years, and now it's Obama no care. You know what I mean? It strikes me as something just so backwards.
Vamp Fashion says it was nice that Mike Myers got one last paid gig before the phone goes silent forever. That from Vamp Fashions. I heard he got paid $50,000 for that. I don't know if that's confirmed or not, but I actually thought that was lower actually than I thought it would be. $50,000 to put your neck out there and do political ads for the Liberals. I don't know if it's true or not, but that's what I've seen reported. I'm glad you gave a shout out to Vicky Mochama in this new show. We're really proud to be partnering with Vicky on this every Friday through the election campaign. Party All the Time will be out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also be able to watch the episodes on our Real Talk YouTube channel. And Vicky will be joining us every week as well. She's going to be joining us on Tuesdays, recapping the week and looking ahead. We're connecting Alberta and Ontario every single week through the campaign, and she's a real talent. We're proud to be working with her. We also got an awesome email here from Jim in Vernon. Jim had watched that episode on March 21st where we were talking to Tara Langan about neurodiversity in the workplace and Gen Zers. Did you know that 50% of Gen Z identifies as neurodivergent? It was an absolutely fascinating conversation. The interview went for like way longer than we thought it would because she just has this wonderful perspective. Tara, she's neurodivergent herself, and just like I just felt my heart was honestly full after that episode. If you missed it, check it out. I feel like every single person, I rarely will speak for the entire audience, but I feel like wherever you come from, whatever your life experience is, you will learn something from this conversation with Tara. So Jim was inspired, and he wrote in to talk@ryanjesperson.com. He says, I was so impressed with your guest and the discussion on neurodiversity. As a retired teacher, Jim says, I would propose that we are all neurodiverse to some degree or another. He says the reference to drugs for ADD and ADHD, Johnny, we talked about that. He said it really struck a chord. He says, I once had a student who was all over the place, physically and mentally, and had just a ton of energy. And the school counselors and the admin and all their wisdom had his diagnosed, and he was put on some drug to allow him to fit into a so-called normal classroom. But it also killed his spirit and his energy. Jim says, sure, it allowed him to stay put and like appear to be focused on one task at a time, but it totally denied his personality and liveliness. Jim says, as a teacher, I did my best to adapt and accommodate all the diversity in my classroom over my years of teaching, and that was a very wide spectrum. He says, the problem was never really the child. He says, I taught mostly grades 6 and 7, the years when the hormones are first kicking in, but the system that attempted to fit them all into a single group. He says, I once had an administrator who, quite frankly, I detested, who commented on my class as though it was a negative, that your class is just a bunch of individuals with no unity. She intended it to be a criticism, but I took it as a compliment. In a rare instance of administrative support, one principal, after visiting my class, told me I didn't have a clue what the kids were focused on, but they were happy. If I had the administrators like that through my career, it would have made teaching so much better. Jim says I retired early, not because of the students, but because of the stress of having to deal with admin and their desire to have a one-size-fits-all school environment. Jim, writing in from Vernon, BC, says we need neurodiversity and it should be acknowledged, but rather than being suppressed, it should be supported. Change the system, not the child. That from Jim. Wasn't that great? I thought that was really a wonderful perspective on somebody who's been there. Mm-hmm. And I know we got a bunch of teachers in our audience, and we'd love to hear from you as well if you want to respond to this and keep that conversation going. And again, that was March 21st, our conversation with Tara Langan, the episode titled Carney's Kid Attacked Neurodiversity at Work. We have a flamethrower. I mean, this just keeps getting hotter and hotter every single week, and we're going to get to that in a quick second. But before we do, I want to make sure that April 12th is on your radar. If you are anywhere near Edmonton, I mean, if you're anywhere in Alberta and you can make it into Edmonton on Saturday, April 12th, I'd be so honored to have you join us at the IC Change Gala. That you can find it online at icchange.ca. That's the letter C, change.ca. This is Innovative Canadians for Change. It's an organization that was actually founded right here in Alberta's capital city 15 years ago, and they have been doing remarkable work all around the world, involving the technology that we understand, taking technology and empowering solutions to the world's complex issues of wellness, poverty, and sustainable development. They're doing remarkable work on clean water in African nations, Uganda, Tanzania, DRC, and Somalia, solar-powered oxygen delivery systems for hospitals in underdeveloped areas. They're doing incredible and life-changing work in trauma and injury programs in Kenya. Friends, the list goes on and on and on, and we'll be highlighting these, celebrating these, and ultimately funding these at this gala coming up on April 12th. Again, that's icchange.ca. I want to encourage you to get your tickets today. Consider sponsoring a table. Bring friends, like-minded individuals who'd be curious to know how technology and innovation, many times developed right here in Canada, is literally saving lives around the world. That's the IC Change Gala coming up on April 12th. I'm really proud to be hosting it. Complete Care Restoration knows that there's nothing worse than the gut punch of an unexpected interruption at your home or business. in the form of a fire, a flood, a burst pipe, or maybe it's just opening up a wall, figuring you're going to do a small reno, a DIY project, and all of a sudden there's black mold and you realize this problem, well, it exceeds your expertise. Don't let it sit there. Don't try to do it yourself. Complete Care Restoration has talented professionals, certified professionals that for more than 25 years have been restoring property and rebuilding peace of mind. They'll work directly with your insurance company to take it off your plate. Heaven forbid, if disaster strikes, think of Complete Care Restoration. And we're hoping that this message reaches the right person, somebody who's either been underemployed or unemployed, but brings a lot to wherever they've been working. You know who you are. You have the attitude. You have the experience. You've got the initiative. You're a self-starter. Solar by Kubi wants to talk to you. Solar energy solutions to power your life. Nobody's doing it better than Kubi Renewable Energy in BC, Alberta, and beyond. But they're leveling up their team. They're hiring right now. You can check out the careers link at kubi.ca and get a live look at jobs currently posted, like a solar PV expert in Calgary, a solar PV designer in Edmonton, an apprentice electrician in Kamloops, a direct solar sales expert in Lethbridge, and the list goes on. If you've got your ticket, if you're a journey person electrician in Kamloops, Kubi wants you to join their team. They're looking for a lead structural engineer in Calgary as well. Great opportunities to join the green energy movement and future-proof your own career with Solar by Kubi. Shout out to everybody in the live chat today. This has been an absolute banger, and we want to let you know.
So colorful in there
this
today.
Has been really, really great. And it's about to level up again, because every week, courtesy of our friends at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, that's Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, and Baseline Road, we solicit your hottest takes. That's right. We know that you're all fired up by what you see around you, and here it is. It's the Flamethrower, presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. Jenny writes in and says, hey, team, and by the way, none of this is good for kids. Friends, just right now, anybody sensitive, we're about to get into one. I'm not censoring anything here. Jenny says, this treasonous, hateful Trump bootlicker of an Alberta premier is a clear danger to Canadians and especially Albertans, and Albertans especially need to know how their elected provincial leadership is representing us globally. That is shittily. From Jenny. Okay. I hope you feel better, Jenny. It was in all caps. How about this one from Ron, who says, as a proud Albertan, I'm very concerned that our premier is laying the groundwork to bring us into the fold of Americans against our will. I'm a proud Albertan, yes, says Ron, but I'm a Canadian first. And I'm even more concerned that this is majority opinion in the rural parts of the province. Ron says, please fact check me. Please tell me I'm overreacting. I don't want to believe this. I don't want it to happen. That from Ron. What about this one from Nathan, who says, after hearing the audio that's been circulating, this Breitbart interview that Danielle Smith with correspondent Matthew Boyle, it's clear she would sell Alberta out to the U.S. in a second. In the audio, she admits to asking the U.S. to pause its tariff policies toward Canada to help the federal Conservatives achieve power, since they better align with the new United States. That's absolutely heinous, says Nathan, given the fact that that orange geriatric ward escapee has made it pretty clear he wants to annex our entire country. And it's just as heinous to demand that whoever wins the the April 28th election has 6 months to deal with her demands or risk a national unity crisis. If that's not a brazen attempt to threaten Alberta separation, I don't know what it is. Nathan says she's a traitor, and she's been laying the groundwork for this since she passed the Alberta Sovereignty Act, which one of the main architects of the bill, Barry Cooper, who has 10-ply admitted it's definitely unconstitutional. Of course the bill was rammed through the legislature to the applause of the Alberta separatist premier. If my province wants to be American so damn bad and the premier leads the charge, she should take the advice that I've offered to the rest of the Maple MAGA spare part traders in Alberta. Fucking emigrate to the U.S., you donkeys, and renounce your Canadian citizenship because we don't want you here. Do us a favor and take your reject Karate Kid villain, Pierre Poilievre, with you, because anybody who has an endorsement from Elon Musk and had to cry to that diaper-wearing orange Mussolini to the south to say he'd prefer a liberal government, even though he endorsed Poilievre in January, sure as shit shouldn't be running the country. As far as I'm concerned, says Nathan, a penny has more value in Canada than either of these politicians. Elbows up! That from Nathan. How about this one from Michael, who says, Jespo, this is very Canadian, Johnny. Jespo, I'd like to start by saying that I really like your show. Thank you, Michael. He says you bring on all different perspectives on a variety of topics, but I gotta call out some real talkers. Why are folks not invoking critical thinking? Michael says, I try to look at politics and policies through the lens of, I don't know, if something that orange Oompa Loompa down south says, but I wouldn't like it. I wouldn't like it if Kamala or Bernie or AOC said it, then I'm not looking at it objectively. He says, like what Danielle Smith said with her list of demands for the current PM, Mark Carney, to do to satisfy Alberta. But if Nenshi said it, people would be calling him a separatist. Give your heads a shake, everybody. You're too full-on Kool-Aid from your own specific parties. He says the debacle down south with the group chat on Signal, the bombing in Yemen, people on Team Trump pulling every muscle in their body, trying to stretch the justification for smearing a reporter who was erroneously added to the chat. It's mind-boggling. He says, and just I see it in your live chat when I watch the show. Obvious bias, says Michael. Folks, take a minute to think. Would I act this way if the other team did the exact same thing? Discourse would be a lot more palatable if that were the case. And then in true Canadian fashion, Michael signs off. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Thank you, Michael, very much. And how about this one from Brian, who has a question for the leavers. The leavers, those that would leave. Brian says, a quick question for the folks who want to join the United States. What do you think is actually going to happen? Notwithstanding the points you brought up about economy, policing, and the environmental repercussions, Ryan, how do they see themselves actually fitting into this brave new world? I mean, Alberta would be America now, right? And Americans put Americans first. They don't give a shit about us, except insofar as they could exploit and manipulate us. Just listen to how the likes of Ben Shapiro talk about Canada, and right to Danielle Smith's face. Do they think that we'll be put in charge of everything? The Americans will want the best jobs, the best everything. If there's a big flood of people coming up here, they would most definitely be given priority over us. Or to put it in business terms, Brian says, how does the company that gets bought out do? Never well, he says. At best, I can see us getting low-level, low-paying jobs with lower health coverage. So just one question. Why? For what? If you think you have no voice or representation now, just wait till the Americans show up and tell you you're not needed anymore. You'll become sycophantic, third-rate peons in a fourth-rate open pit backwater. That from Brian, who signs off, a concerned citizen of Alberta, Canada. Wow! These are all real emails to talk@ryanjesperson.com. The Flamethrower is proudly presented by the DQs in Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, and Baseline Road. When you hit them up, when you visit to pick up one of those Flamethrower signature stack burgers, make sure you let them know Real Talk sent ya. Have an incredible weekend. Enjoy the time with your family, your friends. Stay off social media, and then meet us right back here on Monday. Cheers, everybody.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson. Executive producer Josh Dunford. Technical producer John Hicks. General Manager Katie Cook-Chivers. Account Coordinator Lawrence Derlego. Human Resources Lena Shepard. Website Design Mike Johnston. Voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harmon Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.